Ostaman. If you're watching this, listen up. Whatever they tell you, don't go to Mars. Our world may be dying, but death waits all who journey there. I've been there. It's hell in the skies. You mustn't.
Jezero Crater. Over 247,570 million kilometers from Earth. The Ancient Path, I fondly called it. An old riverbed 10 times wider than the Mekong back on Earth. Throughout the years, expeditions to Mars have been a fascinating endeavor by man. And one thing has remained the same. Evidence of water. Or rather, things that point back to water. Water is the only known element capable of sustaining life. Where there's water, there's the possibility for life, or the semblance of it. Everything under the sun has its beginning and its end. Alas, the Earth was gradually dwindling to its end from years of pollution and toxins that badly contaminated the air, causing it to shorten the life expectancy of the average living being. Then the Third World War happened, fragmenting an already broken world. Plants died. Millions of men, women, and children died. The ecosystem was pleading for mercy, and its wrath still hammered on mankind. The predator had become prey. The phrase "life begins at 40" was now cheered as long life. The planet's prognosis predicts that within the next 100 years, the Earth's core would freeze over. We had to find a new home, which brings us here. Now. For years, Jezero Crater has been a landing site for Martian expeditions from the Earth. The planet itself was inhabitable mainly due to its air, which was very thin with oxygen. Yet pictures from the Delta probe showed dried-up puddles of mud. And where there's mud, there must be liquid. 345 days ago, the first human-piloted expedition to Mars was commissioned by NATO, with 2 objectives: find the source of the puddles, and carve out a niche underground, wide enough to sustain life.
John, buddy, come look at this.
It's Steven, I said, as I walked over to him tentatively. We had been burrowing into the ground for the last hour, and had finally hit what seemed to be a dead end. The burrow was as wide as a school bus. Ignoring my correction, Carlo Rizzi kept pointing at the wall in front of him. My eyes widened as I drew near, spotting what was there, as if I was in a trance. "Those are
hieroglyphs,"
Carlo said, completing my sentence. "Yes, they are," I replied, more to myself than to him.
"Santa Maria. There's blood in the lines,"
Carlo Rizzi said in his thick accent. "I see that, Carlo." My eyes darted around the symbols with dried blood traced along the engravings.
"What should we do? I stopped working the Chronos at this point,"
he said, referring to the drill. "Do we have a semiotician on the team?"
"A semi-what now?"
"Someone who can read this."
"Oh, yes, senor. We do,"
Carlos said, staring at me like a dog expecting his master's pat on the head. Yeah, if he wanted praise, he could start by remembering my name. "Well, go get whoever it is. Hurry." When NATO commissioned the expedition, they called it, with an attempt at grim levity, the Exhumer. At the time, it felt out of place. Still does. Yet with this recent finding, it only proved one thing. NATO knew more than they were letting on. Why else would they send an 11-man crew on a supposed mission to save the Earth? Sounded like bullcrap to me. We all knew life on Mars was a tenuous bet at best, a dazzling mirage in the desert. Yet it still didn't explain why a drill site engineer, a semiotician, a specialized fossil collector, a marine biologist, and 6 handymen for hands-on assistance to the drill engineer, according to the short briefing I got, which also sounded like bullcrap. They spoke in seemingly rehearsed speech patterns all through the 300-day journey, except for Carlos, who seemed to be excessively chatty. I stepped closer, as if by doing so I would be able to unlock the symbol's secrets. Then I heard footsteps from behind me and turned. Because of the lessened effect of gravity on Mars, moving around was way easier, with protective gear, of course. A black spandex bodysuit that looked like clothes but covered every visible part of the body. Attached to each suit is a slender silver reusable oxygen tank, which drains the water vapor in the air surrounding it of impurities, allowing it to become breathable. The suit's mask had visors, which gave off a bluish glow from within to lighten the face of its host.
Dr. Stephen Twain, I presume,
a man said, coming from behind the drill machine with his right arm stretched out for a firm handshake. You presume? I asked, puzzled. We've been on the same ship for 300 days, and you presume?
Well, forgive me if I hurt your feelings, but I don't have the time for pleasantries. I'm James Gunn,
he said, withdrawing his hand. You must be the semiotician.
I am,
he said with stoicism.
Step aside, please,
he added coldly, the subtext being, stay out of my way, and I'll stay out of yours. Without saying a word, I stepped aside to give him a broad view of the wall behind me, which was covered in hieroglyphs. It seemed out of all of our crew members, Carlo Rizzi was the only one I knew by name. The eccentric man named James Gunn walked over and scrutinized it for a while.
Some of these symbols match the ones in the Pyramid of Giza.
How do you mean? I asked, the creases on my forehead thickening.
Because of these markings in particular, Dr. Twain,
he said, pointing at 6 symbols in particular. Symbols shaped like something out of a fantasy story. What do they mean?
According to the Afro-Asiatic language of ancient Egypt, it means death stood by the door, too frightened to go in. That is, of course, an ad hoc, approximate translation, but...
The words caused a stillness in the deep cave. It could almost be touched.
Mr. Twain, are you with us?
The semiotician named James said, snapping me out of my own thoughts.
This is a groundbreaking discovery, my friend.
Friend, I thought to myself. So, we're friends now. There was excitement in his tone of voice. I'm glad you feel excited about this, but I feel this poses more threat than just being a groundbreaking discovery.
How do you mean, Mr. Twain?
James asked with an arched eyebrow, which gave the blue tint within his visor a slightly eerie look. It's clearly a warning. We need to pull back before it's too late.
That's not your call to make.
It's my ship, I retorted point blankly.
And my orders are to find a niche and make it suitable for life. As far as I'm concerned, you answer to those orders too.
He paused for a beat.
We can't afford to fail, Stephen. It's unacceptable.
Without saying another word to me, he took a few pictures using a portable Nikon D4 SLR camera designed to capture images outside space or on another planet. Then he turned and signaled Carlo to continue drilling. A part of me strongly felt this semiotician was nuts more than he showed. Suicidal kind of nuts. Carlo turned the key in the ignition, causing the beast Cronus to roar to life with zest and a hunger to obliterate anything in its path. Due to a lower intensity of gravity on Mars, Movement was easier than it was back on Earth. Burrowing through the hole-like wall in front of them, it didn't take long for Cronus to burst into an opening.
Mr. Gunn, would you have a look at this?
Carlo Rizzi said as he backed up the excavator a few feet, giving James and me room to gaze at the sight that lay beyond. From the headlights of the excavator, it didn't take long for my jaw to drop, awestruck by what my eyes were taking in. Stepping closer, like Alice about to walk through the looking glass, only this was more of a terrifying sight than it was a wonder, I looked to my right to see a speechless James Gunn. "Not so chatty now, are you?" I said in mind. The cave-like structure itself was no cave at all as we stepped through the opening. The ceiling of the cave was as tall as 2 Eiffel Towers put together, and dotted at strategic positions around the cave's ceiling were blue, glowing jellyfish-looking creatures that seemed to pulsate with life, some of them bigger than others. The ceiling itself seemed to span as wide as the Grand Canyon, but what drew my attention more was what lay in front of us. Ruins of a civilization that had once, probably millions of years ago, thrived in this place. Though spectacular in itself, that too was not the jaw-dropping part. The debris scattered around farther than the eye could see from my vantage point had striking similarities to materials found on Earth. Parts of what looked like roofs, windows, and even desiccated human limbs dotted the whole place. Whatever this place was, life had once thrived in it.
"Mr. Gunn,"
Carlo said, snapping me out of my visual assessment of anything that lay before me, at least the ones my eyes could feed on at that moment.
"They're here,"
he added, and I turned.
"Oh, let them in, please,"
James said hurriedly. "You know more than you're telling me, don't you?" I didn't trust him for an instant.
"Bloody hell, would you look at that?"
A lady said from behind us, giving James a reason to evade the question. 6 other men followed behind her with looks of shock on their faces.
"Mr. Twain, meet Becky Sanders, marine biologist,"
James said, stretching an open palm to the lady who spoke a few moments ago.
"Sanders, Stephen Twain."
"Nice to meet you, Stephen,"
she said with an outstretched arm. Huh. First name basis all of a sudden, I pondered. "And we've been on the same ship for almost a year," I almost yelled out. "Nice to meet you too, Miss Sanders," I said as I took her hand in a firm grip.
"Oh, please, call me Becky. You probably just made history from the looks of it."
I laughed in response, which was strange given our current surrounding.
"And that's Steve Rogers, fossil collector,"
James said. "Nice to meet you," I said gingerly, since that seemed to be a mock form of greeting around here. "We've been on the same ship for almost a year," he said with a forced grin, and just walked past me to unload his gear.
"Don't mind Steve,"
Becky said with a casual shrug.
"Always the ambitious one."
"What about these guys?" I said, referring to the other 5 men who had walked in with Becky and Steve.
"They're handymen,"
James retorted quickly. "Obviously, but I mean, shouldn't I know their names?"
"Handyman 1 to 5. 6 stays on the ship,"
he replied matter-of-factly.
"All right, boys, settle up. Let's spread out,"
Steve said over my shoulders. Apparently, he had gotten all his tools in place. The 5 handymen systematically split themselves in twos, the last one tagging along with Steve.
"You two, with me,"
Steve said, nodding to Becky and me. "On second thoughts, we're gonna need you, sir," he added, referring to James Gunn. We started for the wide path right in front of us while the other paired handymen split up, a pair of 2 to the right, and a pair of 2 to the left, leaving Carlo behind by the entrance. As we slowly ambled on further inward, the bluish glow overhead seemed to shimmer as it pulsated, casting shadows in corners and giving glimpses of what was once a housing settlement of some sorts. Medieval looking, but curiously advanced in unexpected ways. Beyond its time. And perhaps ours, too. 60 seconds in, and we heard it. A low growl at first. A growl that sounded barely human. More like something or someone that had lost all touch with its original reality. "She's watching," it said with an eerie whisper loud enough to catch our attention.
What the fuck was that?
Becky blurted out. "It came from over there." James pointed over to a heap of loose debris to the right. Debris of what used to be a small house, which lay now in dilapidation. "She sees it all," the guttural voice said again, closer this time. Steve pulled out a weapon and pointed it in the direction of the grotesque-sounding voice. I didn't even know we were allowed to have guns. What the hell was going on, I pondered to myself. Clearly, NATO knew more than they were letting on. Then something whispered from behind me. "She watches." We all turned in an instant, locking eyes face to face with a creature that could only be described as once possessing human qualities. It had limbs like that of a man, an old man. Its face was oval, probably because it had lost a lot of hair, as a few strands still lingered on the head. 5'4", and with a hunched back that seemed to pulsate like it was a living, breathing being of its own. A creation of Dr. Frankenstein's would be a beauty queen compared to this monster. Yet it seemed to want to warn us about something. "Don't shoot it!" I yelled just before Steve could squeeze a few rounds into the creature. There was something about Steve that seemed deeper than just being a fossil collector. It was there, lurking behind his eyes, a bloodlust that seemed to pervade the already negative aura around him. "I don't take orders from you," he said with his gun still trained on the creature. "Well, you do if you want to get out of here alive," I said, turning to James for some backup. He just raised his hand, signaling Steve to back off. "What are you?" I asked, getting down to the heart of the situation as fast as I could. Whatever was watching us was bound to make an appearance sooner or later, and we needed all the information we could get. "I am you," it said with bulging-looking eyes. "How?" "We all were you," it said with an air of mystery that I wasn't prepared for. "What do you mean, we?" "Everything that's happened has happened before. It's destiny. Fate has brought you here. She watches." "Mate, we're not—" "Let it talk, please," I said, cutting Steve off. "Who watches?" "Andromeda. The one who shouldn't be seen," it said, causing a sick feeling to knot in my stomach. This should be good, I thought to myself sarcastically.
"Andromeda? The galaxy or the Greek mythological princess?"
Becky asked, curious as I was to know what we had gotten ourselves into. "Both," it said, darting its eyes around as if searching for something, or watching for something. "What is it?" James asked, speaking directly to the creature for the first time. "Leave now while you still can," the creature screamed, just as an ear-splitting shriek pierced through the darkness, followed by a cacophony of wailing. "What the fuck? It's gone!" Steve yelled. "Get back to the ship!" I ordered. We darted for the entrance, which wasn't far ahead, but then stopped dead in our tracks a few strides into the sprint. Ahead of us stood a woman in a purple gown, knee-length, with a bluish metallic hue. She stood with her back to us, seeming to sob quietly to herself. The unreality quotient was increasing, but I knew this all to be true, as real as my beating heart, which at the moment seemed like it would burst out of my body, serving as its confines. Then she turned and gazed at Becky straight in the eyes, causing her to gag once, then slump to the ground, dead. "Ah, shit!" Steve yelled as he squeezed off 2 rounds at the partly cyborg lady with jet black hair, but missed as she instantly faded into a dark cloud of smoke, vanishing before our eyes. Still in shock, I rushed towards Becky, but her face was drained of blood and her eyes bulged out, just like the creature we had seen earlier, before the lady appeared. "Oh God, she's dead," the handyman who had tagged along with Steve said, speaking for the first time. "Everybody fall back to the ship." This time it was Steve who said it. "We can't just leave her here," I said vehemently. "We can, and we're going to. If that body is infected or whatever the hell, we're done for." "We spent almost a year to get here, and you want to throw it all away because of a bloody casualty," James said with ease. A strange kind of ease. Suddenly, Steve pointed his gun directly at James. "What the fuck are you not telling us, old man?"
Are you mad?
James shouted.
Know your place, soldier.
Soldier. It all started to make sense.
I didn't sign up for this kind of spooky shit. You better start talking before I give the bitch in purple a little purple rain,
he said with probably more bravado than he felt.
"She watches!"
A voice, not that of the creature but of something else, said from behind Steve that very moment. As he turned, he was looking straight into the woman's eyes as she appeared directly in front of him. Slowly, he turned the gun on himself, blasting a bullet into his head. Fragments of blood and bone spewed into the air. Scattered droplets sprinkled on my face like dewdrops. The woman giggled and morphed into a cloud of dark smoke, immediately vanishing once more. One word crossed my mind with so much force I could feel it tug at my nerves. Run! What seemed to be hooves could be heard from behind, followed by a sob, a giggle, then utter silence. Whatever the being Andromeda was, it was distorted, disturbed, and vengeful. We arrived at the entrance to find Carlo, soaked in a pool of his own blood. His death was also from a gunshot wound to the head. The question I asked myself was this caused by the woman, or something else?
Don't gaze upon the one who shouldn't be seen.
The creature's voice came from behind a pile of debris, and it crept out towards us. "What the hell is going on?" I shrieked.
She wasn't always like this,
it said, almost thoughtfully, as if reminiscing about a time beforehand. I walked over to the being and grabbed it by the shoulders. It didn't even flinch, almost as if it had no fear, or fear found a home in it. "Quit throwing words to the wind. What is going on?"
Get out while you still can,
it giggled. "She watches." "Ah!" I yelled, letting go of its shoulder as it wriggled free and fled down a debris-filled pathway. "Let's get out of here," I said to James, who had suddenly fallen quiet.
"I'm afraid that won't be possible, Mr. Twain."
"What?"
"That being, woman, whatever she is, that's why we're here,"
he said with a straight face. "You knew about this?"
"I did. Miss Sanders did. Steve and his men knew a little of what was going on."
"What happened to carving a niche suitable for life?"
"In a word, bullshit. A reason to get you to come. NASA and NATO agreed that you are the best man for the job. getting us here. In that cyborg is a nuclear reactor capable of powering a whole planet. The galaxy Andromeda is only another timeline similar to ours, but with different rules. She is the living, breathing soul of their existence. Like Gaia, if you will, but machine.
And you know all this? How? My mind was reeling with questions. Oh, come on. There's a lot they don't tell us. It's safer that way. So what is it going to be, Mr. Twain? He asked as he pulled out a gun. Another surprise in a night full of surprises. Are you going to make history with me, or are you going to be another one of its casualties? Suddenly, the creature pounced on James from behind, knocking him off his feet.
Run!
It said in a baritone of what was probably its original voice. Without waiting any further, I dashed upwards from the mouth of the cave.
Don't be like us! Don't let your greed feed off the life in your world!
It shrieked behind me. Truly, this has been the most adrenaline-packed time of my life, and I still couldn't place all that was going on. Suddenly, a shriek pierced through the cave, but I kept running. Hooves and wails could be heard in my wake, but I kept running. Don't you dare stop, I urged myself. An opening. Finally, I was close to the end of this nightmare. Bursting out into the clear, it was right there, a few yards away from me. The Exhumer was a ship shaped like a stealth jet, about the size of a Boeing plane. Running on solar energy, it had the capability of bringing us to Mars and back to Earth. I dashed for the jet, oblivious to the fact that James was just behind me, until he said, "They'll kill you," he said, bleeding, but the blood didn't look like his. "You're better off taking your chances with me, Mr. Twain," he added, raising his gun to level with my chest. My eyes widened in terror. Not from the gun aimed at me, but from what I saw behind James. The creature had grown in size, and it seemed to be bleeding from its right eye. It looked like something mythical, yet wholly technological, as its legs were that of a cyborg, and its arms grew bigger, with fingers pushing out claws like that of a bear. It shrieked into the night sky, then immediately grabbed James by the legs, toppling him to the ground. The beast pulled the semiotician into the cave with it.
Don't come back!
It wailed as it went deeper into the cave.
She watches.
The sixth handyman who had stayed with the ship was dead by the time I got there. I had seen enough to last me a lifetime, and so I got in and prepped the ship for its return home. Earth. What was left of it. Voyaging for 300 days had a way of causing the mind to ponder on anything and everything. I had been lost in my own thoughts for days on end, only pausing for necessities while the ship ran on autopilot. Within this time, a call came through from NASA.
Exhumer, come in. Exhumer, come in.
The intercom on my dashboard buzzed. Exhumer here. Over. I replied after pressing the red button on the intercom. I was getting close to Earth now. They must have picked up my signal.
Please identify yourself. Over.
Static. Captain Stephen Twain here. Over. A pause. Static. Silence. Are you there? Over.
Who's there with you? Over.
Everyone's dead. A pause. Static. Silence.
Please hold.
Not like I was going anywhere at the moment, I thought.
New orders.
You are now in possession of classified information and must report back to Base Juniper Tree ASAP. Over.
Static.
Captain Twain, do you copy? Over.
You want to shut me out? You don't want the world to know, do you?
Captain Twain, you have your orders.
Well, I gave myself new ones, I said as I shut off the intercom and changed course, crashing the ship over the Atlantic, leaving nothing in my wake. Somewhere in Greenland, Earth. Is this thing on? If you're watching this, please listen. Whatever they tell you, don't go to Mars. Our world may be dying, but death waits all who journey there. I'm Captain Stephen Twain. I've been there. It's hell in the skies.
The ship took its time slowly descending to the surface of Mars. I shuddered in my seat, but I was neither excited nor nervous. This was only a job to me, and it wasn't a heartwarming one at that. Once we touched down and the resounding beeps of the alarm system phased into white noise, I was able to breathe again.
Cooper, Ronald, are you guys okay?
West asked. Never better. Ronald unattached himself from his seat and laughed.
Ask me the question when I reach there. Pretty sure when we get inside, we're probably not going to be okay.
West grumbled.
Ronald, stop horsing around. Set up the probes. We're about to leave the ship within an hour.
Ronald's laughter rang around the cockpit. I wasn't even sure if it was an honest laugh or a fake one. Today, though, was a special day. Because our mission was on Mars. This wasn't the first time humanity has come to Mars. We've come numerous times, but recently humanity tried to colonize the planet.
Cooper.
West called. I left my station and went to West. What's up, Sheriff Western?
Funny. Could you call Command Control and give them a summary of our landing and what we're about to do?
Sure, no problem, I said. As a mission specialist, I was going to be tasked with assisting my command pilot, Mr. West, with the success of this mission. Everybody was nervous about this mission for a lot of reasons. We did a lot of hellish training to prepare us for this mission. Specifically, after the debacle of the Mars habitation complex. I met up with Ronald and West as the ship released us into the hard reddish-brown surface of Mars. We weren't far from our destination, though. In front of us was a large, human-built complex that was supposed to be our first attempt to colonize this planet. A lot of money went into this place, so there was no way they were going to abandon it so quickly. They should, though, because even though they cleared out the bodies of the deceased, the place wasn't cleaned extensively or managed. I was sure a lot of internal systems fell into disrepair, and we had to wear our masks initially as a precaution. West said as he started walking.
The landing pad is gone.
Dust has covered everything. That's what we noticed as we got closer. The whole facility was covered in a layer of dust. But the landing pad and the outside walking passageways were worse. They were literally absorbed by uneven mounds of dirt. That's what 8 years of neglect did. As far as why this place was neglected, I wasn't even sure about the whole story, personally. I didn't want to know. There were a lot of conflicting stories about the Mars habitation project. How did those people die? Why did nobody contact Command Control and told them what was going on? The only survivor of the chaos that happened at this facility was considered insane at this point, so people would probably never find out what happened. West input the code to unlock the door. Once we were inside, I saw how badly the station was degraded, from the moss-suffocated air to the stains on the wall. The place had truly fallen out of disarray. We didn't waste any time moving down the corridors and trying to find the main chamber that held the control module and supercomputer. Getting control of this complex as quickly as possible was going to be essential for survival, because we were going to stay here for a while. It took us a hot minute, because a lot of the doors were not opening. I cursed. Damn it! Are we going to have to break our way in? West looked at the map on his PA tablet and said,
There's supposed to be 3 ways to the control room. Let's check down this way.
Thankfully, some of the doors were half opened as if frozen in time, while others were cracked open by the extraction team that came before them. We found the control room, and it was a mess, to say the least.
Good lord,
Ronald said. A large screen showed nothing except many circles of cracks. It was the long crack that came from the left and slithered down the middle that caught my attention, for blood laid across its length. The main dashboard was damaged, with deep cuts into the metal framing. There were even wires strung out from the open compartments underneath the dashboard. West messed with the dashboard until it powered on. Lights glowed through the buttons and indicators as the computer came to life. We got out of our heavy spacesuits and changed into more comfortable attire. We kept on our biomasks since we couldn't trust the air within this place yet. West quickly set up our supplies, while Ronald and I tried to get as many of the systems within the complex online and operational. We tested the systems and quickly found a good number of them weren't working as well, so there was some serious damage. That meant it was fixing time for Ronald and me. A lot of the damage to the systems was caused by a human, meaning it was obvious one of the members of the team tried to sabotage this mission and endanger the lives of his fellow team. Well, at least this evidence was consistent with what the survivors said. To think that a killer was sent into space. It was the last thing anyone wanted to admit. The major oversight NASA had made, not realizing that a sick, demented person was sent unknowingly to Mars, got them dragged through the mud for years by the media. It was a mistake that they were determined not to make again. That's why we were here. Sane, mentally evaluated, strong-willed. We were trained together because the higher-ups assumed that the killer probably lost his mind after spending 1.5 years away from home, rather than the safer possibility that he was just not a good person. As a former soldier myself, I personally didn't think the sick bastard lost his mind. That didn't make much sense to me. No one jumped from being depressed to full-blown serial murder. Still, I was a willing expert determined to do my best. At least, that was the mentality I went into this operation with. We decided to have a meeting inside the cafeteria, but it wasn't going to be a comfortable experience. The walls and floor were like some Picasso painting of a 3-year-old, as swabs of dried blood covered everything. I picked up the cleanest chair and kept my hands off the blood-stained table. We sat there, surrounded by all of this mess, and talked like it wasn't even there. It was surreal. West said,
Okay, listen up. There are a lot of things to fix. The ventilation is leaking somewhere. Radiation alarms are spiking at the northwest of the complex. Cooper, those 2 are on you. The drainage is not clearing out automatically. That will be on me. And as for you, Ronald, clear the landing platform and walking paths. Deal with the spotty electricity.
Can't believe the damage this man did. Ronald responded.
Was that dude high? Like he destroyed everything.
This is why I don't care what nobody says. That man was not crazy. He knew what he was doing. He preemptively tried to sabotage every little thing in this place, and he did a good job of it, because we're struggling to even repair anything. West looked up into the roof and rubbed his forehead in annoyance. The pressure was really starting to hit them now. There weren't a lot of options for trying to make this any better, though.
One thing that I don't get is why he did this. Oh no, we ain't going there, Ronald. Trying to understand why he did this is like trying to figure out the secrets to the universe. We'll never figure it out.
It's simple enough, ain't it? Torture. It's a great way to torture other people. That's what he was doing. So yeah, the survivor was right. That man was evil. Ronald laughed.
You damn well know that's not what the survivor said.
I replied, You see any ghosts possessing anyone here? Ronald laughed louder.
Whew, you tell me. You could be the ghost right now distracting us from the truth.
I said sarcastically, Yes, I am lying to all of you. Wes stood up and said,
If you guys can't repair anything, remake it or construct something that makes the problem go away. Whole new systems? Man, that's going to be a pain. I know, but we don't have a choice. I don't care if you have to cut the path to hell itself. Get it done, or this mission is over before it started. This station was left abandoned for years, and the standards are abysmal. It would be a huge risk to the mission if one of us got sick or injured. So we have to restore this place. It doesn't even have to be fancy. It just has to work.
That was all we needed. The first order of business was that the inside of the complex needed to be cleaned. So I released the small droids we carried and sent them off to wash this place spotless. Ronald got the disinfectant solution tank into the complex, and droids sprayed that solution as they went through the corridors on autopilot. Other droids filtered the air and cleared it of toxins. That was good. Now, to deal with the many malfunctioning systems. My first task was the ventilation system. Most of the filters were burned, and some vents, according to the alarms back at the control module, were underperforming. I replaced the filters. As far as the poor ventilation, I needed to reroute one vent since that area it led to was caved in. My body shivered the moment I stepped in there. I turned on my hand torch and looked up at the roof. It looked like it was mauled open by a T-Rex. What could have done this? It made my skin crawl. I noted the damaged insulation, which was necessary for blocking outside radiation and the high temperature variants. Did that guy really do all of this? This seemed like overkill to me. A shadow passed across the light, and my fingers tightened on my hand torch's handle. My eyes narrowed as I focused on where I moved the beam of light. What was that I just saw now? After staring into the void and finding nothing, I decided to get back to work. My mind must be playing tricks on me. I took up my tools and started to work on cutting off the original vent. This area, which consisted of one lab, a library splashed in a lot of dried blood, and a bathroom, was probably not that important. I pushed open the door to the lab and looked around. There wasn't much in here outside of a few instruments. There were also high-performance cameras and a 3D laser scanner sitting on tripods. The scanner would be useful. I flicked the light switch, but it wasn't working. When I pulled the hand torch up, it revealed the shattered fluorescent lamp on the roof. Great. Part of the roof was carved out like a carton of ice cream with hanging wires. This place wasn't safe. I needed to get out of here. The cabinet should have some useful chemicals. Once I get those, I could leave with everything else. The first cabinets gave me a good selection of disinfectants, solutions, and instruments. My hand grasped the handle of the next cabinet, and a low screech made me pause. I tilted my head and noted the wire that crossed the door and the hinge. My heart slowed its beat as I moved away. I looked around and I caught sight of the tripod again. That could be useful. I used the tripod to push the cabinet door open instead, and as the door opened, a loud thud echoed from the flying projectile hitting the wall. It was shaped like an arrow. I stared at it in confusion. A trap, and it wasn't tripped until I found it. Was this for the last people that once lived here? Or was it for me? I ripped out the arrow and looked at it. It wasn't generic, but a shabby constructed one made out of broken metal. The shooter that sat in the cabinet was just as makeshift as the projectile. The others had to see this. I came out with the chemicals, books, and this makeshift trap. Locking the door, I used the fasteners to secure it and an abrasive that grows into any open spots. It should seal it off and prevent air from getting through. When I showed West and Ronald the arrow and shooter, their faces went stark white in shock. Ronald said,
"I can't believe it."
West said,
"So that's how he killed."
I said, "I'm wondering if it's a remnant of the past." West's face lit up at the comment as he realized what I was insinuating. So West said somberly,
"Get in contact with command control and find out."
So I called them and communicated this information. But they weren't much help to me. The extraction team that they sent only picked up the bodies. Nothing else. When we tried to activate the security and fire doors, many of them didn't open. And as we would find out, somebody manually broke the circuit capacitors, leaving parts of the complex unreachable. So I drew for the diamond bit saw. I revved it up and started cutting my way from corridor, door to door towards the housing compartment, where the bedrooms were. This part of the complex was the cleanest. Other than the blood trail leading out to this area, it was relatively clean. That means all the killings happened outside of their bedrooms, away from their belongings and their comfort zone. It was disheartening the longer you thought about it. I checked the rooms, and one thing that bugged me as I released the droids into this space was the fact that all these rooms were untouched. The mission that was sent here to pick up the bodies didn't even bother to pick up the personal effects. Using the team member ledger that I found in the control room, I was able to figure out which room belonged to which person. Once my eyes settled on the killer's name of Taylor Johnson, I made my way to his room. It was clean, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except for this large, glossy black stone sitting on the table attached to the wall. It was jagged and spiky as it sat there, glinting in the light. Was that something he was working on? The PA system chirped, and Ronald's voice came through it.
"Hey guys, can you come and check this out?"
West and I came out to the complex in our suits. Ronald was already out there with an air pressure blower. He was trying to clear up the heavy coal of dust that gathered on the complex and the outside platforms. Once I saw the clean sheen of the metal under the sun's glare, I smiled. That smile quickly dissipated, though, when I caught sight of those dark marks in the earth. It was like bones being unearthed by the erosion of the dust, but this was not human. Black in color, a stone-like mass traveled in uneven strands under the red earth. The surface of this stone was not solid in its hue, but it sparkled as it reflected light, and through its sheen, shapes manifested in the core. It was like gems that held the frozen specks of life from eons ago. What frightened me was what those shapes looked like. I swore to myself that maybe it was a coincidence, but those shapes in the depths of the stone looked like insects.
Is that some type of stone? I don't have this on file.
Wes said. None of us did, and it was right outside our front door.
That's not all.
Ronald said and turned around. He turned on the blower and shook the air into the ground. Stones blew away in an uprising column of dust, and revealed that the black stone was more interesting in its status on this planet. Ronald turned off the blower and said,
Go out further and look at it.
What we saw when we followed Ronald's instructions were the patterns. Long, perpendicular lines of the black stone surrounded the complex. How the hell was this possible? No one mentioned this in any of the reports sent to HQ, and it was the first time anyone was seeing this. So either they ignored it, or they kept it a secret for some explicit reason. Ronald said,
What do you think?
West rubbed his chin and stared in contemplation. I said, obviously the last team weren't impressed by it, but I saw a piece of it in one of the rooms. They must have dug up some of it. West said,
They probably have samples and records on it, no? Cooper, check the storages and records to see if you find anything.
I left out the part about it being in the killer's room, for I didn't think that was relevant information. My search for information on what the team was doing, both in physical documentation and electronic, was gone. The extraction team did a good job gathering that information and leaving nothing behind. Well, almost. We still had the untouched bedrooms. West decided that we'd leave those rooms alone and take any available unoccupied room out of the respect for the deceased. As far as the black stone, I gave him the one I found in the killer's room, and he said he would look at it later. As for me, I could contact Control, and they were probably useless to us now. They were, and they didn't help me outside of being surprised about the black stone. I told them to go through the records they captured and get back to me on what the deceased team wrote about that stone. After the call, I slid on my spacesuit and went to the roof with some tools. Damn! That ravine on the complex's roof was big. The further I looked down into it, the more my throat filled with bile. There was no way this was natural. So many unexplainable things. I shook my head in confusion, but I never got a chance to think about it, as the complex shuddered from a frightening quake. My legs wobbled as I tried to steady myself. Either that was an earthquake, or that was an explosion. But as I looked around the rocky landscape, I saw unsettled stones and rocks. The shaking stopped, but the alarms from the inside told me enough. Damn it! I ran off the roof and dropped hard on my feet. That hurt, but I pushed that to the back of my mind. I reached the door and slotted the password into the keypad. A beep screeched as the mechanism clicked. The door didn't open though. You could not be serious right now. I reinserted the password into the keypad, hoping I probably did it wrong. I heard no beep this time. Wait, wasn't the alarms blaring just a moment ago? I didn't hear a thing now. This must be a joke. I flipped on the radio on my suit.
West, Ronald, are you there? Come in.
All I got was static. God damn it.
West, Ronald, West, somebody, can you hear me? What's going on in there?
The static was an annoying greeting to get. Why was nobody answering the radio? I needed to get back inside, but how? Looking back at the stone, it gleamed under the bright glow of the sun. My hand fidgeted, and I immediately clenched my fist to stop the shaking. What was this feeling? Okay, focus. The door was locked. It looked like electricity has gone inside the complex, but that didn't explain why the door's system was out. It had its own internal battery, so it should be working. Worrying about that was not important right now. I needed to get back inside, and to be honest, there was one way in. I just wasn't going to like it. After I picked up the jackhammer, I got back on the roof and walked toward the hole in it. I stared down into the harrowing web of wires and mangled metal. My feet moved without hesitation as I climbed down into its chaotic design. Navigating all these jagged edges and wires was a pain, but I was able to squeeze through and into the area that I sealed off. The only light I was getting was from the hole in the roof. I was right. The power was gone. My hand torch was flicked on, and then I noticed it on my belt as I lifted the hammer. That was one problem. Now for the next problem. The fact that I had to break down the door that I sealed up. Nothing could be more annoying than this. I turned on the hammer and went to the door. What I didn't expect was the paper attached to the door. I stopped and stared at it. It read, "It's mine." Several thoughts ran through my mind when I saw it. Many of them were contradictory, but I didn't have time to think about it, and I wasn't going to. If this was some sick joke from some infernal bastard living in this place, they better make sure I didn't catch them. I thrust the jackhammer into the door's edge and shattered the hardened abrasive before I broke through the door's connections. West and Ronald hadn't responded yet, so I hoped they just weren't near their radios. Something told me it was worse than that. For now, I needed to find an oxygen tank. The oxygen in the air was going to drop like a rock now that I opened the seal. I stepped into the control room and saw the control module was still operational, but malfunctioning as the screen fluctuated constantly with flashes of inconsistent data. "West!" I called. Nothing was heard. If an explosion erupted through the station enough to shake it, where would it come from? I went into the storage chamber and pulled out a spare tank of oxygen with a mask. A crackle. I turned around and shined a light on the open doorway. There was nothing. I turned off the jackhammer's engine, and the place fell into silence. A drop of sweat careened down my face as I left the control room. Walking around, I couldn't find anyone. Calling out for either Ronald or West would be so simple, but I was starting to realize it wasn't only 3 people here. If it came to that, I was going to make sure 3 people remained. I found equipment lying outside of the open tunnel that led to the waste channels under the complex. It must be West, who still worked down there. But what alarmed me was the dust and trickled water that coated the equipment in a haphazard way. From the burn damage on the entrance, the explosion most definitely came from there. I moved closer but a distant voice made me freeze. The squishing of water against the floor piqued my interest. It was to my southeast. I spun around, and Ronald yelped as he backed away. My lips twisted into a frown and whispered, "God damn it, Ronald! Don't sneak up on me like that!" His breaths were short as he spoke.
Sorry. Just glad to see you. What's going on?
I threw him the oxygen tank and looked at the entrance. Let's find out. We went through the entrance and into the dirty tunnel, which had a reflective metal wall surrounding us. The further we went, the less shine it had, and the more fire damage showed. I tried to keep my body as small as possible, because my spacesuit was not touching this grime. A bright light kept drawing me closer, begging me to come to its blight. But I stalled in shock to see West. He laid motionless in the depths of that grime that was reddened with pools of blood, bubbled up from buoyancy. The surrounding wall was a mangled mess that revealed dirt that poured into this constricting tunnel. A fire blazed and grew from the center of the tunnel. Near the fallen West were broken pieces of plastic and metal shards. I shouted, "West!" As I hovered over him, I wondered if something exploded. I grabbed the collar of West's shirt.
Son of a...
Ronald's voice shook me. I spun around and saw a figure. For a moment, I could have sworn it was a monster, but it was a human man. Though the way his face looked crazed, and how his hand clutched that makeshift axe, he might as well have been a monster. Either way, it was clear who it was. Taylor Johnson.
"It's mine,"
Taylor Johnson bellowed, announcing his presence to them. I take back what I said. He actually might be crazy, Ronald said.
Can't be.
My hand shook as West raised out of the sludge, as if he raised from the dead. "West!" I grabbed him and lifted him out of the water. West groaned as the pain rattled him. He was bleeding so badly. I had to save him. But I blanched at the sight of his upper arm and chest. It showed so much blood-moistened bone and cartilage under the top skin layer. Oh, I knew he was not going to survive. The killer rushed forward, swinging the axe. The axe scraped against the wall in a ruckus screech. Ronald rushed forward and grabbed the waist of the murderous bastard. The killer swung up the axe, but Ronald pulled himself and Johnson into the dirty water. I called, "Ronald! Damn it!" West kept fidgeting as he rolled up next to me. "West, don't move, please."
Go. Leave.
West said. "Like hell I'm going to leave you behind. Get up. We are getting you out of here." I slid my shoulder under his, but he merely slumped back without any power in him. Ronald cried out in anger. His oxygen tank hit the wall and rolled back into the sewage. That mad murderer lifted his axe. I flung my jackhammer. It sailed into Johnson's gut. He doubled over like the discarded trash I considered him. Ronald leaped up and said,
Kelly!
I grabbed the tank before it reached the jaws of the fire. West used what strength he had to lift himself on one arm, just as Johnson rolled his body and the axe right into my femur. I screamed as the axe cut into my suit and through my skin.
"It's mine,"
Johnson cried. "Shut up, psycho!" I threw my fist into his nose and he screamed as he dropped into the water. The sludge splashed into my helmet screen and blinded me. My bad leg was gripped and pulled. I ripped my helmet off and smacked Johnson in the face to force him to let go.
Go, Cooper!
West yelled. He jumped on Johnson and pulled him down into the sludge. No! I called after West, but Ronald grabbed me around the shoulder.
Cooper, we got to go!
And let this bastard escape again? He deserved hell, and I was going to deliver it. I threw the oxygen tank over the fire behind West and Johnson. Ronald said,
You crazy?
Move to live, I shouted when I pushed Ronald away. Ronald ran and so did I, pushing aside the thunderstrikes of pain in my leg. That wind pulled in just before it imploded and erected a fantastic booming blast that ripped through the complex's cellars. I coughed and rolled on the floor of the complex now that I was out of the sewer, but I immediately realized my fallacy. My helmet was left behind.
Cooper, hold on!
I stifled my breathing as I broke the hand torch off my suit and flashed it at Ronald's retreating feet. My eyes blinked as vigor left my arms and legs. A raging pain burst in my chest as I struggled for air. I blinked and gasped. But it wasn't my last breath. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Ronald breathing from an oxygen tank. A mask was over my nose and mouth. I was okay, but not so much for this complex.
Sacred oil. Damn thing's busted again. O'Bannon, come and take a look at this. Fungus has eaten right through it. They should have been more careful. Never know what kind of shit's taken hold this far out from the main sector. We have to be careful. There are thousands, millions, thousands of millions, depending on the likes of you and me, allegedly. I mean, when was the last time you saw a Heber? Shit, when was the last time you got permission to go on leave? This whole place is falling apart. Hey, watch where you aimed that thing. You almost blinded me. I work better in this outer dark, you know that. Not me, buddy. Never liked the dark. Never have, never will. Our job's to fix things. Make clean, make clear. Not obscure. Hey, you said it yourself. It's the likes of us that keep the old vessel going. There's enough darkness outside these sturdy halls and walls and bulkheads without inviting more of it in. You sound like me da. Oh yeah? He was not comfortable with the darkness. Sounds like a sensible man. Not necessarily. I mean, he taught me a lot about the work, you know. Passed on his skills like. At least in a superficial way. What do you mean? He either taught you or he didn't. Oh, sure. But there's more to being a mechanic than fixing things. Dad worked the agri-filters, like his before him. But I always knew I'd find myself down here. Well, it's a bit of paid and a bit more prestigious. You misunderstand me. Find myself. Well, it's always in the last place you look. Look, this leak will be here tomorrow. Just like the thousands of others that's on the list. I'm calling it a day. You should too. Night. What? Calling it a night. How would you even know whether it's one or the other down here? I'm done. You're getting on my nerves, you and your damn whistling, so fuck off. You should get some rest too. You know why I know. I see better here. I'll patch the leak. Keep working. Don't feel tired at night. Suit yourself. Garten, S. Mechanic Independent Theta class on board the vessel. Currently contracted to the 4th Outer Substern. Routine inspection and maintenance of rots, contamination, corrosion. Consulting mechanic, Gan O'Bannon. Dates... Oh, shit! Well, now we're off the record. This whole situation stinks. It stinks worse than this bend in Tunnel 7G I've set up as a bivvy. I knew when I took the gig it was going to be a bit lonely and odd, but the pay was decent, and besides, Allah wasn't going to give me a second look without a bit of bloody money to my name. I know. The old soaks warned me about the outer substerns. Someone's got to bloody do it. And I needed the money. Problem is, pretty sure it's been more than a cycle since my last packet got sent down the tube from the upstairs. I'd lay a complaint if I could just remember what day. Fuck! That time already! I'm losing myself. Overhead axon always transmits through the tunnel at whatever this time is. Sense of distance, sense of place, no sense of time. It's cold, it's dark. I don't know how O'Bannon does it. He's been here longer than me. And more concerning, he seems to like it here in the outer darkness. It's cold. It's metal rot. Can't feel my hand. I must have slipped on it funny. Wait. What the hell? Oh, what the ever-loving hell? What the fuck is this shit on my hand? Get off! God damn it, it's growing. Crawling up my arm. Feels like fucking ice and poison and... Ah! It's just a dream. Hard to tell these days. You're right there, mate. Think I'm done for the morning. I fixed your mistake, and more. The old vessel won't break deep on my watch. So can I crash here for a short kip? Jeez, you scared me. Yeah, don't turn on the light. Eyes are still a bit sensitive. Sure, just give me a minute to get my gear and I'll head out. Any problem areas you reckon I should take a look at this shift? Now, this whole craft is one big problem area. But as long as us mechanics keep scuttling around her veins, she'll be fine. Habbers will be fine. Right. Hey, O'Bannon, you missed any pay packets? The pneumatics at the transfer station seem to have been pretty quiet lately. Oh, don't worry about that stuff. It'll all get sorted once I ascend. You mean when you get back to the Habs? Yes. I don't recall specific when I first ran across O'Bannon. He must have started his contract just before me. And we were from different parts of the ship, so had no knowing of each other prior to working in the same sector. He's a good worker, interesting way of speaking, and seems thoughtful, mostly. Serious about his work. There's just something not quite right about the fella. Now, don't get me wrong. Independent mechanics tend to be an odd bunch. You need focus, attention to detail, or not being afraid to get mucky and... Blasted, how can a rivet this big be so damn poorly bucked? Wait. What's this lodged in the... Need to take a break. Maybe deploy the mask. Something's not right down here. My mind's starting to wander. The construction in this part of the tunnel seems different somehow. There are materials that have been out of regulation and rotation for years. The metal is pitted, corroded, almost a greeny bronze. I don't know what those old buggers who built the place were thinking. I'm glad we've updated a few things over time. Every little replacement takes a little longer. Sometimes I can swear I come back later to find things out like I left them. The old vessel's stubborn. I suppose I would be too, at her age. Garden. Oh, Bannon, what the hell are you doing up? Thought we'd pretty much sorted our shift arrangements. Can't sleep. And there's something you need to come and see. I can almost taste it through the mask. Copper, mildew, stale air, and... Wait, why are you wearing your rebreather? No time for questions, I'm fine. I've got some stims if things get dicey. I came across it last shift, but it was half the size. We need to find a way to contain it, and... We need to get word to the above decks and tell them we need support. Now, this doesn't look like a simple leak or misaligned Faustus splice that needs repairing. I never came across anything like this before. The anomalous liquid must have leaked from one of the myriad of pipes that were normally flush with the ceiling of the tunnel. A cotter pin, the work of a previous crew's sloppy, temporary measure, had come loose and now lay half submerged in the faintly hissing glop. The frayed ends, where the pipes normally connected, now hung slackly. But did one of them just twitch? There seemed to be a faint indication of organic, almost peristaltic motion. A sense of dread, greater than the general level of anxiety I'd been feeling these last few shift cycles, began to slither its way up my spine. It was then that I took a step back to properly survey the eerie scene. My attention snapped back to focus on my excitable colleague. Get back! What in the name of thermo-bloody dynamics do you think you're doing? I think if I can get around it. You see, it's only covering half this part of the floor and ceiling of the pipe. Come on, give me a boost. Perhaps I can get a better look at the origin of this thing. No bloody way! I can barely see my hand in front of my face, let alone help you over this morass. Stay put. We'll make some sketches. Set up a silver chloride time-lapse to keep an eye on things while we're gone. Then work up a report to send back up above. No way we can fix this on our own. I need to hear what Boss CashApp has to say. More than our job's worth. All right. I suppose you're right. Let's coordinate our shifts for now. I suppose I could do with a rest. Look, my hands are shaking. You still write reports, huh? Of course. That tune. It sounds familiar. Don't recall ever hearing it on the wireless, though. It's an old song. Old as the ship itself, they say. My grandmother taught it to me. Now that's a tricky proposition. I mean, does anyone really know how many years the old girl has on her? The ship, not your grandmother. Sorry, O'Bannon. I asked one of the Tier 2s once during a hitching festival, but she said, Hush. You speak too easily and too free. Now don't tell me how to talk, you ass. Fine. I'm going to post my report, then get some shut-eye. Next cycle, maybe we'll get some answers. Garden, wake up. It's growing. Come and see. Hey, mate, your arm. Why are you hiding? What's that under your jacket? It doesn't take long to make our way back to the site. I follow Ostaman, noticing a slight irregularity to his gait. Small damp patches left behind as he treads. Look. It's here. It's all here. I think this place is some kind of locus, some kind of node. Everything, the growing corrosion, the rust, the fungus, even barren metal can give life, give birth. Grandma might have been right. What? Look. Crystals. Growing like mushrooms, feeding where they grow. I can see the spores, like motes of glass. Don't breathe it in, you daft bugger! What the fuck's wrong with you? Let me take a look at the time lapse. Oh, no. Oh, no. Wait. What the hell are you? I can see. Ostaman! What the fuck? Hang on, I'll try to pull you out.
Oh God, I was wrong. I was wrong. The chest.
Grab the marlin spikes. Stop thrashing. It's burning and freezing. I can't see. I could see, but now I'm blind. Why was it taken from me? Why was it? No. It just swallowed him up. That's impossible. This vessel's built of the true alloy. Nothing should fully eat through these pipes. I've got to get word to above decks. They can't ignore us anymore. Not with these collodion papers. We can fix this. Garson, my love, you're awake. I am. Be still. You've been asleep for days. Allah! I thought I might never see you again. What happened? Where's Ostaman? What happened? Shh. He's fine. They've taken him for testing. I was so worried, darling. It had been weeks since the last communique and we'd almost given up hope. But Boss Charup decided to risk sending in a whole team. You know how things have been lately on our level. But none of us gave up hope. We knew you'd fix the problem and that you'd make it. And here you are. Can we come in? Of course. Sweetheart, look who it is. All your friends and family. We watched you grow in metal halls, and now you're standing 10 feet tall. We've watched you all your life, that's all. The engineers will never fall. Hip, hip, hooray, you've saved the day and mended that which went astray. We watch and wait and hope and pray that you will keep the dark at bay. Come on, guys, I'm not 5 years old. I can do without the nursery rhymes. What I could use is a decent drink, a chance to stretch my legs, and then some time alone. That I think we can arrange. Out, everyone. Shoo, shoo. Leave your bouquet on the bedside table. Out you go. Right. Now the unwarranted hero's welcome is out of the way. Can you tell me what happened exactly? The last thing I remember is the black stuff and O'Bannon just about to... Shh. Let's get you up first. I'm sure you'd love to stretch those gorgeous legs of yours and get a chance to see some proper light. I can't imagine what it must be like down there. I'm so lucky to have you. I can't wait until we get permission to wed. I know for sure that Boss Charup's bound to say yes after all you've managed to do. I can just see it. A hab of our own. Well, at least I should have enough saved by now that we can do right by your old man and mine. Must you always be so practical? Who's the one relying on you to help him walk right now? I'd say that makes you pretty practical. Well, at least pretty. Hey, tell you what. You lean on me and I'll lean on you. We'll lean together. Brasco! Allah! I called in at the medsac, but was informed you had checked out. Are you sure you're in a fit condition to be discharged? Well, I just want to say how proud we all are of you, Brasco. My name's... The way you did what you did! Look, my apologies, miss, but can I drag this dashing young hero away from you for a second? Of course. Mr. Brasco, in addition to my earlier congratulations, I wanted to speak to you privately. As you may have realized, things aren't quite as ship-shape as they could be down below. I know, of course, we in Sector 7G are just an infinitesimal part of a vast, living whole, but even so, I want to take you into my confidence. You have seen, documented, and fixed things that, well, even the most senior among us, grease monkeys, might never get to see. I'm sure you will have noticed by now that, for all that we try to keep things regimented, keep the dark at bay, make sure all the habbers get to live their lives of quiet desperation, sometimes... I'm not Mr. Brasco. Oh, I know that. I'm not really Charup. No one is. See? The figure before me extended his hand, willing me to shake it, a smile slowly spreading across his too smooth face. Why had I never noticed this before? He had an embalmed look, as if paraffin had been injected under the skin. It was shiny and poreless. Ignoring my lack of response to his overture, his other hand moved slowly, and he caressed the wrist of his outstretched arm. Then, almost tenderly, his fingers flexed, nails digging into flesh as he slowly, gently, began to tear the skin from his extended limb. A seam was revealed, and a cloudy yellow fluid flecked with soot began to leak from the wetly shining gristle beneath.
Nothing
as it seems. You're only patching the leaks in the ship. Open your eyes, man. Open your eyes!
I'm not there. That wasn't real. I just slipped and fell. I am here, and this is now. I must get back to camp. I need to warn them. Garton S. Mechanic Independent. Theta class aboard the vessel. Urgent, urgent, urgent. Currently contracted out to the 4th outer substern. Routine inspection and maintenance of rot, contamination and corrosion. Consulting mechanic, Gan O'Bannon, deceased. Date unknown. The unidentifiable contamination is spreading. So far, unable to contain. Garton S. Mechanic. Urgent, urgent, urgent. I have retreated beyond initial contract area 7G. The substance continues to grow. This is the 3rd missive I have submitted via pneumatics. Fortunately, I have a good idea of additional submission stations. Garton, urgent, urgent, urgent. Substance spreading. 6th temporary campsite. Unsure of next location. Supplies holding. Bad dreams abundant. Have taken matters into my own hands and decided to initiate emergency seal of this section of the tunnel. Will face up to ramifications and impact on Habs at a later date. Please reply. God, I can hear it. Slithering down the tunnel. Carrying the bones of that poor... No one deserved to go that way. Burning, freezing, and melting all at once. His eyes almost seem to vitrify, though. Aqueous humus shouldn't react like that. How many days has it been now? Too many days down in the hole. Gotta close it off. Seal it in. Bones, corrosion, and all. If I can manually decouple this, it should... There. That's done it. Now it should be simple enough to... Saved the day and mended that which went astray. We watch and wait and hope and pray that you will keep the dark at bay. Bugger me. I think I'm going to put in for a new line of work after this. If I can get out. Why won't they reply? Maybe the dreams were... Shake it off, you daft bastard. We all heard the saying. There are more things between bridge and bow than are dreamt of in your philosophy. But the crystal fractures, the mold, the corrosion, the black stuff. Something's rotten in the bowels of this vast vessel. Is this thing a shell or infinite space? None of them up above really know. Not like I do. I wasn't ready. O'Bannon wasn't ready, rest his mad soul. Still, it's contained. It's over. No more mad gurgling. No more darkness. Silence. Lamplight. And the grave. What the hell? Report. Garton S. Day... another. This paper film is the precious commodity. I know not if it will reach the world above. I hear again the whistling. O'Bannon was an irritating prick. A wispy annoyance enamoured with alchemy and abstraction, jitting the clear conscience and icy intellect we engineers need to carry out our tasks. Nevertheless, strange ideas, and seem to have insight I do not possess. He is gone now, but the echo persists. Surely a particular phenomenon of the way these tunnels twist. I have no doubt that the builders, creators, originators wrought such angles intentional. Just have to keep moving. Keep the dark at bay. Repair what has gone awry. Make safe, make right for those on the higher tiers. I'll earn the right to be with Arla. It's getting cold in this section. Might be a turbine power out. Should move towards the heart of the machine. Oh, wait, what? Could have sworn this junction veered left. No matter. Rip a quick mark with the tungsten. Okay. Time to take stock. I can't believe a relief team hasn't been alerted by now. Then again, how many times has a request for more supplies been overlooked by CashApp and his lot? You've food enough. You've lamp fuel enough. Aside from the rot and damp and eerie echoes, this part of the bowels is fairly known. The plan was to scour, suture, repair and replace. The old vessel goes onwards, after all. Even that fifing maniac was on board with that. Report. Garten S. Day. Dissension, inclination, declination. Who knows? So be it. Time passes, and the work continues. Incidents of high strangeness, rare now. Monotony high. I am keeping morale up as per regulations, conducting a major sweep and refit of several of the aquifer threads and trawl gaskets in this sector. I sing to myself the lays of the workman's while, and recall the faces of those above. Except, I'm not really sure anymore if... What? But surely, I thought that... Nothing. No. Nothing. No, wait. Days of darkness have rendered my eyes keen. There's something beneath skin and skein of this paper film. Spidery lines, almost glowing. This is not a regulation transmit. What is going on up above? It's a map. Coords. Must be a way out. Something. I thought I had sealed myself off from accessible exits, hence the wait for a relief crew. Light acetylene, heavy equipment to purge the corrosion, rescue me and recover what's left, if anything, of Ostaman. Let's get moving. How strange. The air seems fresh. The grumbles of the old vessel somehow less worrisome. Cleaner, too. Like an unclogged artery. Report, Garten S. Day... a good one. The missive from above has directed me to what can only be an exit. This part of the sector seems to be free of the creeping degradation elsewhere encountered. Lack of branching paths and narrowing of aspect suggests capillary adjoining another great Venus causeway. I will no doubt find my way back to the upper reaches in due course, and discover the reason why earlier reports had gone unanswered, and deliver the sad news of Obanon's demise, though I know not if there will be aught to miss him. My apologies for the growing informality of these reports. They are my sole outlet of human expression, emotion, and tick away a sense of time in the creaking darkness. My head! No more walking and writing. How curious. The ceiling is even lower than before. This can't be a regulation width. Then again, who can say how many different creators had their hands in this place? For all I know, there could be countless sectors built with different measurement systems altogether. It was rumoured in training that... And now I'll have to kneel. It's surely not too much further. The air grows cleaner. The metal smoother, the light lesser. There's fuel yet. On with the torch.
Hey, Garten. Watch out.
What? Echoes of my own voice. Must be the configuration of the tunnel. Or I'm just getting tired from all this crawling around. I should rest. Get something to eat. There's enough room to set up the stove if I just shift my body this way.
I'm not gone. I burn. I twist. I'm in the wall.
Leave me! You're dead! You...
Even then, man.
Deeper, deeper, further in, boy, further into the bowels of the machine.
I will not be pursued. I have my work to complete. My mind is sound. My work is sound. Nothing I do will be undone. Stop your whistling, Spectre. You might have tried to frighten me, but you are nothing but a scattershot. I will keep you at bay by dint of my certitude.
Clean, friend, meat, flesh, darling puppet guardian. You have only to surrender to the rust and the chrome. Quit your scribbling and die. Surrender.
Never! I can't. The walls are closing around me. I've got to get in further. Escape. There's space enough. This machine, this vessel was built for humans. Wasn't it? Wasn't it? Wasn't it? Squeezing through further in. Must escape. Wait. The air. The fresh air. It's... No. Wait. There's something. The walls. The walls that hug me. I'm just a rat in a maze. I'm just blood pumping through a vein. I can't get out. I can't get out. The walls. They're breathing. The crystals, the fungus, the rotten metal and steel and... Whoa! No! It's alive! And I'll never get out. We will never get out. We're being swallowed up. Were we put here? Or did we grow here? Does this vessel harbor us? Or are we trapped here?
The Planetary Defense Team started as yet another improvised branch from NASA. It grew over the years, and after the very first alien attack on our planet, it quickly became the most important institution in the world. It became the Planetary Defense Corps, and I was right there in the team of executives leading the changes and expansion of the organization to protect our entire planet from these unknown forces that were suddenly attacking us. But here's the thing. I started as part of the Science and Research Unit. I was never a soldier, a politician, or anything more than a committed astrophysicist that wanted to stay alive, and in the process, learn as much as I could about the forms of extraterrestrial life that were intelligent enough to perform organized attacks against our species. However, as I was forced to admit after my colleagues pointed it out for years, I seemed to have a knack for leadership, defensive strategies, and anticipating the next move of our opponents. So, after the untimely death of the first 2 directors we elected during this extraordinary war, my peers around the executives table of the Planetary Defense Corps appointed me as the director. It was the beginning of a new year, and I was at the head of our best shot at stopping the annihilation of our world. 2 distinct attacks marked the first year of my team as director of the PDC and prepared me for the most anomalous event in human history. It was January, and the headquarters of the Corps in America were restless under a heavy blanket of snow. But I was on our jet on my way to Australia. I spent most of my time traveling from one targeted location to another, seeing firsthand the results of the attacks. At first, we thought it could be something innocuous enough. The early specimens that crashed on our planet every other month were burnt and wounded after traveling the universe toward us. But they started showing up more and more often, and they were growing stronger, bigger, smarter, and more violent. A few days ago, our satellites detected an incoming invader and determined it would land somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. The entire planet waited, holding their breath as we searched for the creature at the bottom of the ocean. Days later, it burst out of the waters on a beach in Australia. I jumped on our jet along with my team as we activated the state of emergency for the entire country. The Australian Army moved in record time toward the location. It still wasn't enough. The beast was about the size of a 2-story house. It wreaked havoc on the beach, and we estimate that it took about a dozen lives with it. According to security camera footage, the creature looked reptilian despite its silhouette that resembled a great ape, and it was capable of opening its jaw several feet wide and swallowing down 2, even 3 people at a time. The army arrived just in time to scare it away. It was the first damn thing that lived long enough to escape our planet. I had to be very careful with what I told the press, but back in our headquarters, we were able to freely discuss what it meant for us that one of those creatures was capable of showing up, killing our people, and leaving almost unscathed. I would never forget the words of my second-in-command, Captain Travis Oliver.
This means that we aren't dealing with animals merely hunting for food and fighting on instinct.
He did an admirable job at keeping his voice steady, even when it was obvious we were all shaken to our core.
It means we got ourselves an intelligent enemy, capable of adapting, planning, and making split-second decisions for its survival. If it managed to leave, it'll manage to come back. It'll probably be stronger, and it might not come back alone.
If only I had known just how true his words would be. We fought similar incidents for 2 months more. And then we faced the second case that changed my perspective on our extraplanetary rivals. This time, our defensive mechanisms had evolved into satellites that could shoot incoming attacks. But it was also the first time that 3 different entities attacked us at the same time. Our system collapsed, the satellites crashed, and 3 alien creatures landed near the capital of Argentina. The good news is that the army was close, and our jet would land shortly after. We naively thought we stood a chance at defeating them, maybe capturing one specimen alive for analyzing it. And yet, those 3 massive beasts, oval-shaped like a gigantic egg with countless tendrils and tentacles protruding from it, opened their jaws. Jesus Christ, it was catastrophic. Hundreds of horrible, wild things crawled out of them. They resembled spiders, the size of small dogs, much faster and deadly strong. The fight lasted about an hour. The army massacred as many monsters as they could, but their number didn't seem to go down. There were too many, too fast and organized to defeat. It was the worst attack we had faced so far. The state of alarm in the entire planet and all around me was the worst it had ever been. I arrived in the South American country right on time to see the worst of it. Captain Oliver asked me,
Director, are you going to order a bombing of the location?
I can't, I told him, gritting my teeth with overwhelming frustration. Look at the coordinates. It's too close to the city. The army is right there. Thousands of people would die.
Shall we order an evacuation?
It's useless. I snapped at him and pointed at the screens. Look close. They aren't just fighting. They are grabbing the soldiers. Hell, they're even pulling people out of their houses to drag them back to the 3 alien bodies we identified first. It's the same strategy again. They're taking people from us. How's the attack going? My right-hand man hesitated, and that was enough for me to know this would be bad news.
We're hitting them, of course we are, but the damage seems to be minimal. The bigger specimens are made of something unyielding, something heavier than anything we are capable of destroying.
It was a nightmare. In the grand scheme of things, compared with other battles in all our history, the casualties weren't that numerous. But the sheer helplessness of it all. I mean, our entire society was devastated afterward. In the following months, the attacks only increased. But so did our resilience. We were at war with an enemy that targeted our entire planet. This time, humanity was a united front. Our armies and scientists worked tirelessly to defend our population, come up with new defensive methods and more powerful weapons. We took many losses, and I was sure that sooner rather than later, I would be cut down from my position as director of the Planetary Defense Corps. I was doing everything in my power to save our world, and I doubted anyone could achieve much more than what we were already doing. But our progress in this war was barely noticeable. We started receiving attacks every day. They hit major cities in Europe and Asia. They landed on the oceans and took the coast of South America by surprise. They kidnapped thousands of people from Africa and North America. Hundreds of thousands of people died. Entire cities were destroyed. Civil wars and protests broke out against passive governments and newly installed dictatorships. We were seriously starting to think it couldn't get worse, until, of course, we were aggressively proved wrong. Summer was coming to a close. It was early in the day, and I was barely arriving at my office when Captain Oliver stepped inside. His trembling hands, and the way he avoided my eyes until the very last second, were terrible signs.
There's a new attack coming,
he said. For the first time, he didn't sound like a soldier. He sounded like a terrified young man. Where will it land? I asked him. I was apprehensive about his nervous demeanor, but I was mostly exhausted and discouraged about our odds in this war. I didn't anticipate the gravity of the situation.
Right here, Emma. That thing is coming directly toward us.
Travis's words shook me to my core. It was obvious we were thinking the same thing. Its destination was not a coincidence.
You have to see it.
He added, and promptly walked out of my office. I followed him along the hallway and into the control room where our team studied the signals from our satellites on a 24/7 schedule. For the first time since I started working as director, the room was perfectly calm. Nobody was moving. They were barely breathing. And they didn't even notice me entering the room. All eyes were on the largest screen at the center of the room. I looked up and studied the results along with everyone else. Captain Oliver was right. The coordinates matched the perimeter of the PDC headquarters. Somehow, that wasn't the worst part of it all. Next to the map on the screen, there was a rudimentary silhouette of an alien specimen currently making its way to our planet. Underneath, we could read the specifications about it that our radars captured. Taller than a 10-story building. Possibly 100 square meters in dimension. Bigger, heavier, and probably much stronger than all the other specimens we've seen before put together. A mothership. That gargantuan monstrosity looked big enough to exterminate our country, if not the entire world. Our satellites would try to shoot it, but I could already tell they wouldn't be able to make a dent in its armor. It was horrifying, but figuring out a plan of attack wasn't all that difficult. This time it was obvious. I had little hope it would work, but at the very least, I knew what to do. Worst case scenarios had been discussed for years already. I just didn't think I'd be the one to make it happen. That thing will take several hours to arrive on our planet, I said. At first, my voice was slightly shaky, but as I continued to give orders and the people around me stood taller and prepared to listen, then my courage strengthened. We are going to evacuate the area as fast as possible. The entire state, if we can manage it. I want every single emergency alert activated on the planet. Warn the United Nations immediately. Strongly suggest that the leaders of every nation declare a state of emergency and send the entire population to the shelters we have prepared around the globe. Give them 2 hours to comply. If not, send the message worldwide. Make it as pressing as possible. And let's hope the people will listen. And then as soon as that thing is close enough, we're going to... God damn it, we're going to activate the nuclear weapons. They are our last resource, but this is the worst we've ever seen. This is it. We fight with everything we have. There was an ominous silence reigning in the room after I stopped talking. But nobody protested my decision. Everyone got to work. We had to be quick, efficient, and decisive. I moved to the largest conference room. I had a lot to discuss with the executives of the Planetary Defense Corps, and I expected calls from every world leader coming in the next minutes. We were facing a threat big enough to exterminate our species if we let it. And yet the greatest shock was yet to come. 2 hours later, when the evacuation was in full swing and the shelters around the world were opening up, my meeting, which very well could have been the last one we got to have, was interrupted. Captain Travis Oliver entered the room with the last 2 remaining workers of the control room. Everyone that was partially essential to the operation had joined the evacuation process. This small team looked unsettled, but not as worried as I saw them when they delivered the big news.
Director, we have important news.
The captain informed me.
Our satellites detected a new invader. A smaller specimen, maybe even similar to ones we've seen before, but it came from the mothership approaching our planet. It looks like they sent out some sort of a scout. It's approaching our location at the fastest speed recorded for an alien attacker.
I took a deep breath and considered our odds. This was unusual, and nothing good could possibly come from it. But I had my hands tied dealing with the much bigger threat. You said it might be a specimen we've dealt with before, right? I addressed the captain. Well then, send the best of our troops to deal with it as fast and efficiently as they can. At the first sign of something unusual or particularly alarming, let me know. My mind was running wild with possibilities. The minor attacker could be a bomb, could spread a virus, could start a fire, could deliver an army of millions. How was I supposed to expect that fucking thing would land on our planet talking? 30 minutes later, I was running out of the building, accompanied by pretty much everyone still present in the state after the evacuation. Our soldiers had a nearly perfect barricade around the alien. I could see the smoke still lingering in the air after the creature dropped on our grounds at full speed. I made my way through the crowd of soldiers forcefully. Everyone else was completely silent and still. I could hear one completely unfamiliar voice rising loudly as if coming from a set of speakers. I was breathing raggedly and stumbling against heavily armed soldiers. I couldn't even see the alien yet, but I was listening to those unmistakable, clear, prophetic words.
"Do not attack,"
said the seemingly female voice that was heavily distorted.
"Do not attack the incoming visitor. We come in peace. We come to negotiate. Do not attack. If the visitor dies, your planet will be destroyed. We want to negotiate. Stand still and wait for our ambassador. Do not attack."
When she was done, there were a few seconds of silence before the speech started all over again. Same pitch, exact same words and tone. It was like a recording. I reached the edge of the crowd of soldiers and I was able to take a good look at the unwanted guest, the so-called scout that the captain pointed out. This one was almost familiar. It looked like what we recognize as a giant squid, although the tentacles were more numerous and oddly short. It wasn't moving or attacking us in any way. It was only repeating the words it was given for us. I turned to face the general standing beside me and told him, "Completely annihilate this creature. I want this scout dead." The soldiers waited until the rest of us had retreated to a barely safe distance away before they started their attack on the alien scout. The message delivered by the interdimensional beast felt like it hung in the air long after it was wiped out. Whatever sent it to this planet ahead of its own arrival had sent it to its certain death. Could we seriously negotiate with a creature like that? The next few hours were undoubtedly the most intense that any of us had ever lived. We couldn't let the news of the messenger spread around the world. Too many people knew about it already. Everyone had an opinion, and hardly any of them agreed on something. The stakes couldn't be higher. The clock was ticking, and an inhumane amount of pressure was resting on my shoulders. The decision wasn't exclusively mine. I could be persuaded. I could be forcefully taken off my position if the rest of the PDC didn't agree with my decision. Anything could happen. Finally, the time arrived. The mothership was close enough to our atmosphere that we could fire nuclear weapons. If we were lucky, and that thing was weaker than its size suggested, we would save ourselves. If it didn't work, we were irredeemably doomed. But I was hung up on the part of the message we received.
If the visitor dies, your planet will be destroyed.
This was enough to suspect this terrible monster wasn't the last of its kind. Even if we eradicated this one, we were lost. Maybe negotiation really was our best bet.
And if it isn't?
Captain Oliver asked me as soon as I shared my thoughts with the rest of the team.
What if it's a trick, Emma? What if that thing attacks us as soon as it lands?
I shrugged. My decision was already made. I told them, "We will use nuclear weapons then." Travis gasped and choked on a hysterical laugh.
You'd kill all of us. You could wipe half of the country. It's insane.
It's our very last resource. We have to try everything else first, including negotiating. We will fight until the very last minute before using them. Now, the jet is available and prepared to move everyone to a safe location. Everyone that wants to leave is completely welcome to do so. I am our ambassador. I will do the negotiations. The next following hours were like a dream. Not even a full-on nightmare, because it lacked the urgency of one. I suppose it was the calm before the storm. If I closed my eyes, it almost felt like I was connected to the entire planet. Most of the human population had to be locked up underground in bunkers. All the world leaders either immediately agreed with me or eventually gave up trying to change my mind. They had their weapons ready, but they were also hiding in the most secure bunkers in the world. At the Planetary Defense Corps headquarters, more people jumped on the jet to leave, even some of the soldiers. Almost everyone that had a family chose to leave. Almost everyone that lost a family member to the alien attacks chose to stay. The final moment was approaching, and I felt like I had transcended the ultimate level of fear and reached a state of indescribable peace. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't angry or sad. Mostly, I think I had accepted that, even in the best possible scenario, it was very likely that I would die in the next couple of hours. That didn't make me reckless, though. The detachment from my own safety only made me more hyper-focused on doing whatever I had to do to guarantee the safety of everyone on this planet that still had any chance of survival. When we got to the time of arrival, we waited inside the building for safety. The creature landed behind our headquarters in the wide, empty stretch of land where we last saw the jet depart. It brought with itself a giant cloud of smoke and dust. When the air settled, we reluctantly and with faked confidence made our way outside. I was accompanied by 8 members of the PDC and only a few dozen soldiers that wouldn't have stood a chance against even smaller specimens. When we looked up at our visitor, we had to lean on each other to stay upright and not fall on our knees at the enormity of the threat. The colossal creature looked much bigger than any numbers could have prepared us for. At first, that thing looked like a very irregular cubical form. There was dark smoke coming off the top of it, and I believed even some ice clinging to its surface. But then it started to change. It was stirring. The sounds were truly sinister, like ancient bones breaking, like the very foundations of the world shifting, and the ground started to shake underneath our feet as the monster moved. Its limbs were loosening, peeling back from the core of its body. The beast stretched its giant legs. 6, as far as I could count, each one covered by a thick gray exoskeleton reminiscent of Earth's crustaceans and about 30 feet long. The contraction of the creature untangling limbs and tails to the sound of cracking skulls was revolting. But it only got worse when its enormous jaws started to open. The monster yawned like a god that had slumbered for a millennia. Gray fog flew out of the freshly opened cavities. There were 3 visible mouths slowly opening. At the sides, 2 horizontal mouths were lined up with a dozen of copper-colored fangs about the size of a truck each. The mouths were big enough to rip apart half of our headquarters building in one bite. But the vertical mouth creaking open at the front of the creature, that was an infernal portal opening right before our eyes. It was a fissure in the face of this alien. The lips separated themselves slowly, dripping a thick, dark substance that looked more like black lava than an animal's saliva. The teeth of that area were different, sharp as knives, and too many to count, lined up in rows like a shark's. As the mouth continued to open, I could see thick, heavy tendrils like ropes linked from one side to the other. It looked like the roots of a carnivore plant, a tangle of exposed veins, an indestructible spiderweb. The entryway to hell. I knew we didn't make a very impressive group. I could have bet that most of the people around me were wide-eyed and open-mouthed. Maybe crying, possibly running away, or even pissing their pants. Everything in front of us was terrifying. But the real shock, the biggest surprise came when we saw a person standing in the mouth of the beast. Initially, there was a light, blinding at first, and then merely warm. It came from the insides of the alien, and I didn't pretend to guess how its body was capable of that. Then we saw a strange appendage creep out of the mouth facing us. I compared that awkward piece of bone and cartilage with a set of stairs. Then we finally saw it. Her. There was a human silhouette illuminated in the mouth of the monster. It walked slowly toward us, with the posture of royalty, and opened her mouth to speak. I thought we were too far away from her to listen, but then the words came at us like a storm, directly from the gargantuan mouth of the beast. They communicated as one.
Hello, people of the Earth. Thank you for following the instructions and welcoming me into your planet.
She said through the booming, distorted voice of the alien.
Come closer and see me. Step forward without fear. At the moment, I just want to talk. Let us have a civilized conversation for once. Please.
If we had made it that far, I thought we might as well embrace our current circumstances. At my signal, my group, the last army standing, composed of less than 100 people, started walking toward the alien. As we closed the distance, we noticed more and more details about our enemy. The exoskeleton was made of a material far superior to anything on this earth. We accurately guessed our bullets wouldn't even scratch it. Soon enough, I was able to make out the specific features of the woman that came out of the gray, gooey insides of this gigantic beast. She had dark hair, and I would have liked to say her green eyes lacked soul and life, but they were actually striking. She had a passionate gaze. Her body was almost entirely covered by animal furs, remnants of specimens from a faraway planet that got turned into boots, a long coat with a hood, and loose pants. She was equipped with 2 items, and both seemed to be made of bone or something from the monster's exoskeleton. One of these mysterious weapons was strapped to her back, and the other one she held like a cane as she stood at the top of the stairs and held out a hand toward us. "Send your own ambassador. We have much to discuss." I didn't tremble when I heard the voice. Now that I could see I was dealing with a human instead of the enormity of the creature that brought her here, I felt more confident. When I started walking forward, nobody tried to stop me. Stepping on that set of stairs, made out of the body of an alien, was incredibly strange. But to be fair, it only felt like metal. The real unsettling parts were up ahead of me. I could smell the scent of this monster, a mixture of coal and something sharp, like chlorine. When I reached the top, the ambassador stepped to the side so we could face each other. All of my sternness met her dangerous amusement, and she offered me a hand. "You can just call me Ambassador." I was disgusted by the mere idea of touching her, but steeled myself and gripped her hand tightly and introduced myself, saying, "Emma Barnett, Director of the Planetary Defense Corps." My rival nodded slowly and then said, "So, you're the one I should blame for my kidnapping by alien monsters." I pulled my hand back and widened my eyes. I expected the worst. I thought she'd kill me instantly. But then it hit me. If she was their ambassador, she wasn't meant to show resentment to the entities she served. We heard a deep growl from the depths of this monster, as if it heard her bitterness. "Never mind," she said quickly. "Let's go. We have a lot to talk about." I had no choice but to follow her inside the body of the beast. We walked on the firm, only slightly viscous surface of the alien's insides. The walls around us were bloody muscles, exposed bones, viscous spots, and scattered teeth that were part of an anatomy I had no hopes of understanding. Then she started explaining. "You see, Emma Barnett, you're clearly fighting creatures much stronger than anything this pathetic little planet can come up with. But we can admit this. We aren't smarter. The original creatures only know to explore the universe, land on random planets, eat, destroy, and kidnap. And what's the point of taking hostages? Connection. Collaboration. It's difficult to explain if you haven't experienced it firsthand, but these so-called aliens are capable of linking themselves to our brains. Choose one of us for each of them. Offer transport and protection in exchange of a superior intelligence to make the decisions for them. No language necessary. Spare me the details, I said. I have no interest in knowing about the corrupted thoughts of someone that works for the enemy. She chuckled bitterly. What part of us being smarter and in complete control? Didn't you understand? So, you and others like you are responsible for the attacks on your own planet? This isn't our planet anymore. No shit, it isn't. You're traitors. You betrayed your home and your entire species. Watch your tone. This time, when the ambassador snapped, she took a step back and raised her cane between us, pointing directly at my throat. I gulped nervously, stepped backward, and slowly raised my arms as a sign of surrender. I'm going to be very clear with you now, the woman spoke slowly and firmly. If I die, if I'm hurt in any way, the entire species will feel it. They will come for revenge, and the Earth will be destroyed. But you will be saved on one condition. We want 1,000 people to take back to our planet to join our community. You will comply, and you won't try to pull off any tricks. I still remember humanity. I know millions of you will jump at the chance to abandon this doomed little rock and come with us. One last thing. For the sake of diplomacy, they will need a convincing leader. You could fight, and I could kill you, and pick the next in line until I find one that takes the deal. You're disposable. We all are. The point is, you aren't walking out of this creature alive, Emma. I closed my eyes for a moment. I needed to think. I had to come up with a way out. A way to use this one opportunity to put an end to the war. I had to find a way to use this woman and the two weaknesses I noticed in her. Resentment and a lack of self-worth. What if you could leave this creature, though? I asked her. What if, after all, I could save you? Don't you miss individuality, independence, being indispensable and irreplaceable, and being more than an ambassador, having a name that's only yours? Stay here. Let the world treat you like a savior, spoil you like a queen, and help us end this war. She had only spent a few months away from home. She couldn't be so brainwashed to deny this tempting offer. When I saw her hesitating and hold on to her cane wavering, I dealt my most convincing point. We will send 1,000 people with an ambassador to appease the enemy and buy us some time. But you know them. You can help us. You said so yourself. We aren't stronger, but we are smarter. You are smarter than this, and you know you should do the right thing. The tension in the air was suffocating. This could be the end for me, or the beginning of the end of this interplanetary war. The weight of 2 different planets and 2 different species was hanging in between us, until the ambassador dropped her weapon and offered me her hand one more time. we had a deal. Hey sci-fi horror fans, it's Teresa. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. And remember, stay cosmic.